is a perfect segue, having Saraya talk about funding in the ecosystem more generally, and then we're going to dive down straight into our plans for a new ecosystem fund for Polkadot with a target size of $100 million. All right, next slide, please. Why do we need a new large ecosystem fund? Well, because the unfortunate reality is that many other VCs from outside the ecosystems are currently still ignoring Polkadot. If you walk around here at Token 49, you say you're working on Polkadot, they always go like, why Polkadot, right? I always like to say Polkadot is probably the contrarian trade of this cycle. It's one thing that we have a very strong conviction on, that we very strongly believe in, but that very few other people do. And that's obviously from an investor perspective exactly where you want to be, right? You don't want to go into a crowded trade that everyone does. You want to go into a high conviction trade that has an incredible upside. You want to go into a trade where there is a mismatch between the tech stack that is out there and the market price. And I think this is exactly what we're seeing in Polkadot at the moment. Saraya talked about like the VC versus grants before. The grants before. We're going to talk about the VC approach here. But before we go into all the details, Mario is going to give us a little bit of an introduction in terms of who we are, what we did in the past, our first fund, and then I'll talk where we're going to go from here.
So for those who don't know us yet, so we launched our first fund in January 2022, and we have so far supported over 20 projects, primarily through the Parachain auctions, but also through some classic VC rounds. We reached our AUM of over 10 million this year, and we have over 50 LPs, primarily high net worth individuals and family offices. We'll talk a bit more about that later. We are exclusively focused on the Polkadot ecosystem, and we're also the co-founder of Polkadot East, Max, and his two colleagues, Vincent and Thibaut, are here today as well. And those organizers of the Hong Kong monthly meetup, so very active in the Asian community, organizing events and so on. We spoke at a lot of conferences. Like I think the biggest ones like Token 49 and like the Hong Kong Web3 Festival and the likes. And we both come from TradFi background. So Max from Deutsche and Morgan Stanley, myself from Bank of China. So we really want to bridge the gap between traditional investors and the Polkadot ecosystem. And we've done that with our first fund, where the vast majority of our investors actually are from traditional backgrounds, so family offices, entrepreneurs, high net worth individuals. And as we prepare a second fund, we definitely want to bring more capital into the ecosystem.
All right, next slide, please. So when raising a $100 million fund, that's a pretty big target size. The obvious question is going to be, where is all this money going to come from, right? And as we're starting our fundraising journey now for the second fund, right, after having successfully raised the first one, I want to spend a little bit more time on that, right? It's not going to come, we're not going to pull this money out of thin air, right? We have a plan how we're going to raise this fund. So let's talk about those different funding sources. First is general partners. So that's the two of us. I think this is worth highlighting because a VC fund is, in my opinion, only really credible if you have sufficient skin in the game yourself, right? There are quite a few like other VC funds out there where the GPs say like, oh yeah, we hold like 0.1% or something like that. That, in my opinion, is not very credible. If you want to make these kind of contrarian bets, you have to have skin in the game. And I think we made it very clear that we do. The second is our anchor investor. So we have more to announce on that. So I'm going to skip that for the next presentation. Strategic investors. So this is something quite interesting because there are a lot of other like ecosystem projects. Let's think of people like exchanges, market makers, even people more in the, recruitment space, in the marketing space, people that do provide services to the wider blockchain industry, and that also have an interest in coming into our fund as an LP, right? So they get the entire upside of the projects that we're investing in, but at the same time, they're getting all the access to the projects that become portfolio companies of ours. So at the same time, this is an advantage for the projects that we're investing in, because it means that we can offer them essentially an entire package deal. So, okay, let's take a market maker as an example, right? Market makers are generally good businesses. They have like a balance sheet. They want to like reinvest into other related businesses that are a little bit outside of their own core business, such as VC, right? So we have these kind of situations. They're coming into our fund. And then for us, we can say, oh yeah, we're working with this great reputable market maker for projects that we invest in. We can offer this as a package deal. Okay, we can introduce you to this market maker to help you with, or to help you with exchange listings, to help you with marketing, with HR. You know, some people could call this an accelerator. That's kind of like, you know, what everyone wants to be these days. We think of it more in terms of being as useful as we can, right? As a VC fund, we obviously have skin in the game. We want these people to be successful, the projects to be successful, and every introduction to some useful counterparty that we can make is also a win for ourselves, because it helps our portfolio companies. So that's why I'm talking a lot about these strategic investors here. Now, other VCs and fund of funds, that's kind of a very interesting one as well. So, you know, here at Token 49, we're walking around, we're like meeting a lot of different other VCs. Over in Hong Kong, we've got like, you know, many different other VC friends. Most VCs, most crypto VCs these days tend to be chain agnostic, right? When you talk to them, they go like, okay, we deploy wherever we see an opportunity. But as a result of that, they also don't necessarily have like the best access. For us, we said very clearly right from the beginning, we're only going to focus on the Polkadot ecosystem, and we're going to be the best at that game, right? We're not going to look at what's happening at Solana, on Avalanche, on Berachain. Okay, we keep a high-level overview, but it's out of scope, right? We're not going to deploy any money there. As a result of that, we have better access within the Polkadot ecosystem and can give this access also to third-party VCs. And the way we work with them is asking them to commit a small LP ticket to us, right? So they are already invested in this fund and share like the upside of the projects that we're investing in. But in addition to that, that gives them access to co-investment opportunities in the Polkadot space. And that tends to be very attractive for them. So these are the conversations that we are having here in Singapore, like these days. When I tell other VCs about that, they're usually quite excited about that, because building a good deal flow pipeline is one of the most important things you can do as a VC. All right, institutional investors are, you know, it's kind of a bit of a more generic term. You know, it usually like includes players such as pension funds, endowments. So yes, we do talk to these kind of players as well, but I don't think that's going to be like the main target audience for this type of fund, because it's still a little bit too niche, a little bit too specific, and maybe a little bit too early for these types of players, right? So yes, we'll talk to them. We have a few interesting leads, but I don't think this is where the bulk of the money is going to come from. Instead, the bulk of the money that we're looking to attract is going to come from family offices. And so what actually are family offices? Let's just jump onto the next slide, please. That's kind of where I want to spend a little bit more time talking on, because that's a very central pillar of our fundraising strategy. So family offices are generally defined as professional investment entities of individual families, single families, with total investable assets of $50 million plus. So the principal of a family office would be, I don't know, let's say the son, the grandson of a successful entrepreneur who are looking to build out their wealth, who are looking to pivot into different industries and like professionally manage their family fortunes, if you want so. In Hong Kong, this is actually a very common concept, I have to say. In many ways, like Asian family offices are more advanced in the strategic thinking than we sometimes see in the West. Well, obviously in both regions you have that, but you know, maybe sitting in Hong Kong, it's something I observe. I can give you one example, right? One of our existing LP, his grandfather started in the shipping industry, shipping goods between, you know, mainland China and Europe. His father took the money from his father, invested it into real estate, made a very good return on that. And now kind of the third generation is taking over the family fortunes. And they're thinking, okay, what are like the growth industries of the future, right? And then usually they identify something like AI, biotech, and the blockchain space, and you know, others. But they're the first ones, they're humble enough to admit that they're not experts in any of these areas. And therefore, they prefer to work with professional managers on that. And from our perspective, running a very like focused Polkadot fund, this is exactly where they like to go, right? Even within the crypto space, right? I mean, they're thinking a lot about it. They're not gonna go like, okay, we're gonna just dump, you know, 50 million into the entire crypto space. They go like, within crypto, which are the most interesting areas? And maybe, you know, they go for Bitcoin mining. Okay, that's an interesting area, and we're gonna do it via these guys. Or Ethereum-based DeFi, and we're gonna do it with these guys. And then Polkadot, we see, all right, we're gonna do it with Harbor Industrial. So that's where we expect to get most of the funding from. We're looking to start a roadshow, going to many different family office summits around the world and raise there. All right, next slide, and over to Mario.
So as Max mentioned, we're going to be on the road, and we will also invite projects and other ecosystem players to join us. If you like, just get in touch with us on the calendar. But very importantly, as Max mentioned, Asian family offices are typically more open to also make direct investments in projects. However, the big part of family offices still needs a standard investable product, and that's standard fund structure. Typically Cayman Island or BVI. We chose Cayman Island as the industry standard globally. And you actually have two options in Cayman Island, LP-GP structure or SPC. SPC has an advantage that you can plug in multiple funds under an existing umbrella at a lower cost. But the setup, initial setup is a little bit higher than the GPLP structure. For the first fund, we had a GPLP structure, which is a little bit lean, but for basically for one specific fund. So overall structure, you see at the top the different type of investors. So the GP, HIC, that's us. The anchor investor, as Max said, we will announce that separately. Institutional/professional investors, so that includes the family offices. And then the fourth part is the later phase, the retail. So this is kind of like also the timeline. So obviously we're the first ones in the fund, then the anchor, then strategic investors, professional investors, institutional, and retail coming the latest. So we will kick off with the VC in the closed-end fund first, and we can actually run all those strategies mentioned here also from a closed-end fund, and then in a phase 2 also start a liquid fund and with a potential listing later on to actually help the liquidity on Polkadot. But as said, those are our 8 key strategies that we will plan for the second fund. So classic token VC, but also very importantly, we will also be doing safes because we think not every project will need a token. So it's very important that we also able to invest in the equity of those projects and support them that way. We will also deploy capital for launch pads. Our good friends from Polymaker here, for example. So obviously the number one funding launch pad. We call it Launchpad. I know you don't like to be called Launchpad, but Polymac, the funding mechanism on Polkadot. So we're planning also to deploy capital there. And very important strategic investments. So what is strategic investments? Strategic investments is where we see existing Web2 or Web3 companies that we think need good technology, and the best technology is Polkadot. And we want to bring them into the ecosystem. So what Sitel did with Mythical is a great precedent there, and we need much more such cases, much more success cases to bring to the ecosystem. So that's what we're going to do with the strategic part. On the liquid side, as said, we can also do that from a closed-end vehicle out. It's basically secondary market support. There's a few great tools. Hydration is building, for example, like DCAing. So you constantly have buying pressure on the tokens. And then the liquidity pools, so to improve the liquidity in the ecosystem. And then the algo funds will pick up on one, the volume and the liquidity, and then see, oh, there's something happening here on the ecosystem, and will create buying pressure overall for the ecosystem. Core time brokerage is something that we will look into. We think there's a lot of innovation to be done. Of course, initially, core time is going to be really cheap because we want to bring a lot of new projects into the ecosystem. For the long run, we will also need predictability for projects on the price of core time. So I think there's a lot of need for financial innovation to also create derivative futures contracts on core time and the likes. And we will also closely monitor this part. And of course, staking pools. So we want to work with the different projects, help set up collator pools and staking pools. So to get more nodes out there, connect them with the operators, and we can also provide the initial stake for the staking pools. So in a nutshell, this is the overall circle of our strategies. So we want to really utilize the tokens that we get from a VC investment, and instead of just lying there, we actually want to put them to work for the ecosystem, for liquidity, for staking, for secondary market, and the likes. So, yep. Thank you very much. As said, please just contact us if you have any specific questions. We will update the community on our roadshow very soon, and also on the details of the announcement for our second fund. Thank you.
Thanks.